This video, like, everyone who talks about pyramids is talking about this one because it is quite astounding. It has 4.5 million views. And I get asked a lot, Wirtual, what's your take on the new Demi Lee video? I've already watched it on my own, but I'd be happy to give my takes. It's a huge construction model that a researcher has come up with and sent to Demi Lee. And Demi Lee is presenting the new construction idea for the pyramids.
About 2 years ago, I got an email from a guy who had a theory about the pyramids. And at first, I kind of ignored it, because when it comes to the pyramids, the line between researcher and conspiracy theorist gets a little blurry.
Everyone has a theory, right? Like, everyone has a theory about the pyramids. How do you know some person is presenting a new theory? How do you know if they're correct or not? And this guy sends her like a 100-page PDF with different models and everything.
He sent me all of his research, almost 10 years of work, and I did look at it eventually, and it completely changed the way that I look at the pyramids. He said the pyramids weren't built, they were unbuilt. And maybe all the missing evidence that we've been searching for, the ramps, the tools, and the machinery, it's not missing at all. It's actually right in front of us, just misinterpreted. So
when I saw this intro for the first time, guys, I thought, oh no, what's the theory gonna be? Because like we're seeing water elevator, we're seeing a lot of these typical conspiracy construction models, and I'm thinking, oh no, but I promise you, this is actually, I think, one of the better construction theories that are out there.
I want to walk you through this theory today, but I'm not gonna lie, this email did take me down a very strange rabbit hole. Because for all the theories and simulations and 4,000 years of research and speculation,
and cool visuals,
we actually know very little about how these structures were built.
That's what we want to know.
146 meters tall, 2.3 million blocks of stone. The base is almost a perfect square, off by mere centimeters, with a slope so razor precise, because even the slightest variation would mean a failure at the top. And the whole thing is aligned almost perfectly to true north, off by just 1/15 of a degree. And they did all of this without compasses or lasers or GPS. The latitude is the exact same number as the speed of light, and just 0.
When we got to this part of the video, I started thinking, oh no, what is happening?
0.0002 degrees off from the pyramid's latitude is also this subway in Louisiana, because a lot of things exist on that latitude.
Just before you hear this in another conspiratorial video, she's obviously making a joke there that there are a lot of things. The pyramid is aligned with the compass directions, likely because the sun sets in the west. The latitude is the same number as the speed of light, measured in meters per second. When was the meter measurement invented? March 26th, 1791. So this would be, 3,000 plus years after. If you ever hear this, it's a funny number, but it doesn't mean aliens, right? So Dami here, reasonable person. We're not going into the full alien stuff.
But it is worth remembering, if any civilization could pull this off, it's probably the Egyptians. Every year, the Nile flooded, and it turned the valley into a surplus machine, with ridiculous amounts of grain, enough to feed tens of thousands of people who weren't farming. Remember our video on the Romans?
This is the argument that they give for why the Egyptian civilization was so ahead in terms of what they were able to build. Like, they just had infinite food and water. When you don't need to think about where your next meal is coming from, you're like, bro, what should we do today? How about we build something cool? And then you start Minecrafting.
They got their grain from Egypt.
And then you build bigger and bigger.
That kind of surplus meant Egypt had something incredibly rare in the ancient world. Time, labor, and stability for massive multi-year engineering projects. Oh, by the way, they weren't built by slaves. Archaeologists found entire workers' districts at Giza with bakeries and workshops and medical teams, and even
See, I am so torn by this claim, because yes, there's a workers' village, and okay, you do need able-bodied, healthy people to carry all the stones, but to say they did it voluntarily, it is very convenient, I think, for Egypt if the pyramids just happened not to be built by slaves, but every other monument of the ancient world was built by slaves, but theirs was the ethical one. But that being said, it's also a product of such a scale that you without a doubt need to involve your entire nation to build a pyramid, greenlight such a product and sending resources and stuff for that. But the people who did the worst work here, I don't think they were voluntarily doing it, let's say. A lot of theories about how the pyramids were built.
Cranes, counterweights, kites, water elevators. But there's two big ones.
Whatever you do, guys, if you take anything away from this, don't fall for the water elevator theory. Please.
It's in the classic one, the external ramp theory.
It's not Minecraft.
Drag the blocks up a
No,
huge
you played
ramp
Minecraft and it works. It's
rises.
not.
It's very simple. In theory, to keep the slope gentle enough for normal humans and not physical 100 athletes, the ramp would need to stretch around 2 kilometers. Anything shorter or steeper, people probably start dying on you.
So,
ramp that's safe to
this
walk
is the classic
on.
problem.
You've basically cost yourself more materials and labor just to build the thing that builds the thing. And the real killer is, there is zero archaeological evidence of a
external ramp doesn't work. Huge external ramp doesn't work.
Then there's a twist on this theory. A ramp spiraling around the pyramid. Shorter, more compact, reusing the same slope over and over. But now you have a different problem. The faces of the pyramid are perfectly straight. Otherwise, the edges can't meet at the apex. But to keep it at this precise angle, the builders had to constantly check the edges. But with a fat ramp in the way, it's blocking all the corners that you need access to.
If you were to build it this way, you would be able to get the blocks up, but you would struggle greatly with making the monument actually look aesthetic.
If the ramp isn't outside, maybe it's
internal
inside.
Ramp theory. This used to be my favorite theory because now you get to check the corners, you still have the spiraling ramp, and you actually have an external ramp for parts of it to facilitate lifting some of the heaviest granite stones in the middle. But the problem is that they haven't found it in scans, guys.
A hidden ramp spiraling inside the structure. It's elegant, but then in 2015, the pyramids got a giant CT scan. They found something crazy. A massive, unexplained void just above the Grand Gallery,
That technology
which led
works.
to thousands of new theories overnight. But what they didn't find was a clean spiral running just under the surface. If a kilometer-long ramp was hiding there, let's say, you would expect at least a faint trace.
And this I agree with. Like, you would see something. They would maybe fill in where the ramp would have been, most likely, but I feel like you'd see some trace of it still, right? Anything.
But instead, the scan shows scattered voids. It doesn't necessarily kill the idea, but it strongly weakens the argument. The thing about these theories is that most of them actually work until you reach the top.
No gilded capstone ever documented on Old Kingdom pyramids. Just, if you see these in like Assassin's Creed or
until you reach the top.
Anywhere else, they're not gilded.
Even a tiny error at the base becomes a huge deviation at the top. The edges need to be perfectly straight, so you need full access to all 4 faces and lots of room to work. When you look at pyramids in other cultures, you start to notice a lot of them dodge this issue with a flat top. Even Egyptian pyramids later lose their tips. This is why, according to this Egyptologist, although pyramids were made all over the world, only the Egyptian pyramids are considered a miracle of the world.
They're also taller and older and contain more material. Depending a little bit. There are some that contain equal amounts of material, but they're flatter and easier to build.
Let's get to this email that I received 2 years ago, which actually kickstarted my obsession with the pyramids.
Let's see it.
His name is...
Here it starts. So this is where, now we've kind of set the baseline. This is where the new construction theory comes in.
He's not an architect, not an Egyptologist, just someone who spent 10 years obsessively modeling every measurable stone at Giza. Like thousands of blocks, hand-placed in 3D. And at first, I thought it was a little bit, feels a little conspiracy theory.
Full disclosure, guys, that was not me. Not my alt account. This is someone else.
Solve the pyramid. He was trying to solve the system that produces a pyramid. He says
but I'm curious.
The Great Pyramid wasn't built on its own, but through a chain of sacrificial structures that are designed to be cannibalized. Let me explain. Before the Great Pyramids was a natural limestone outcrop with small hills. First, they identified the high points, shaved them, and terraced them, turning the hill into a working platform.
Another reason they did this is because the Nile River used to have a branch that would run right by the pyramids. And if the pyramids themselves weren't impressive enough in their size, as you're traveling the Nile River, you look up to, like, this is on top of a hill, and it's a huge structure. Like, it would be impossible to miss the greatness of this monument.
Then you overbuild. Instead of starting with a pyramid shape, you create a rough, gigantic trapezoidal step mass with an integrated ramp system. And once the ramp reaches its full height, you start carving it down into the final pyramid shape.
Because you're actually, like, you first created the mass, and then you can check the angle all the way on the way down. The problem of placing the casing stones also goes away. You know, the casing stones are the most risky to place, but if you have a huge working plateau as you're placing them, it's easier.
Once you carve down the step mass, the extra limestone is then reused for the other pyramids.
So we're gonna get into this, but this is where maybe some details of the theory aren't correct.
The Great Pyramid is roughly 6 million tons. Choi's model estimates the initial step mass to be around 8 million tons. Carving that down gives you roughly 2 million tons of reusable stone. This gets split between the working mass for Khafre's pyramid and into the other annex buildings. Then this process is repeated for the other pyramids.
The initial big problem with this theory of reusing the material is that after the Great Pyramid gets built, it's not the pyramid right next to it that is next. Yeah, so this picture on this pyramid on the left here is the Great Pyramid. And then this is the Pyramid of Khafre. But this one in the middle is not the next one. The next one is actually the Pyramid of Djedefre, though it's been completely destroyed. So it is a 3-hour walk away. So you would, if you're cannibalizing the structure and building another, you probably wouldn't do this. I mean, you're talking at least, Djedefre didn't have a long reign, but you're talking many years between where you just have a huge scrapyard of material sitting here. And also, another case of this is the red pyramid in front, and that one in the back is the bent pyramid. Both are huge, and they look pretty close together. But the distance between these two is a little over a kilometer. So if you're doing this cannibalizing thing, this is a needlessly long distance between the two. It doesn't explain how all the pyramids were built. Like, it's possible that these older pyramids had a different construction model, and the newer ones, like the Great Pyramid, had a improved one with reusing material this way. But so that reusing element does have some problems.
What's interesting about this theory is that it treats the entire plateau as a single construction engine and a closed-loop system, and it actually matches Egyptian behavior.
This it does. Like, the Egyptians did recycle a lot and also appropriate from each other.
They turned broken boats into furniture, broken furniture became small objects, and later dynasties literally mined old pyramids for new buildings.
But this last point is thousands of years later. To our knowledge, the Great Pyramid stood relatively undisturbed from 2500 BC until around the year 1300, and that's when they started taking off the casing stones for building in Cairo. There's still a culture of doing this, but it's so hard to say what they were doing back when it was built.
And most importantly, this system explains one of the biggest flaws of the external ramp theory: the missing debris. See, most theories fail not because we find something wrong, it fails because we find nothing. The massive external ramp, no debris. The internal spiral ramp, no signs of a continuous spiral. The water shaft theory, no canals.
Listen to this, chat, very carefully. The water theory that you all love.
No signs of a continuous spiral. The water shaft theory, no canals, no cuttings, no retaining walls. And this way of disproving based on negative evidence totally makes sense from a proper archaeological point of view. But what if that evidence didn't disappear through time, but by design? Maybe for them, a sacred form should not have any trace of a human builder. Maybe they always recycle the construction evidence. Maybe they always restore the site to purity. But sometimes an architectural detail can reveal the construction method, even if they try to hide it.
This is where History for Granite comes in. History for Granite cameo.
This YouTuber, History for Granite, went through an insane journey to catalog around 6,000 surviving casing stones across 3 sides of Khafre's pyramid. And he found a pattern: tiny, tapered stones forming vertical streams on each facade, which he calls bonding stones.
So if you look at this image, where these stones are is where they would have finished a layer or an area on a layer, and you see these patterns upwards, which hints at some process going on, but you can clearly see they follow this like trickle either down or trickle up.
Since there's no bonding stones at the centers or the corners, these weren't ending lines, they were starting lines. This is pretty important because if there was a giant external ramp attached to the structure, you would probably see hotspots.
Yeah, like this. You'd see a diagonal all the way up.
Lots of bonding stones. Again, this is not proof of any one theory, but maybe it can disprove some theories. So
you get
how
closer
do we know
by,
for sure?
eliminating the bad
Like,
ones.
how does a theory become proof? In math or hard science, proof is pretty absolute. You run the experiment, anyone can repeat it, and if the result holds, then it's true, until someone disproves it. But with archaeology, well, you can't really run the build a Great Pyramid as a lab experiment.
And there's also many ways to build a pyramid, right? There are many of the ideas that are proposed could work. Like perhaps hypothetically, your water elevator could actually work, right? The internal ramp could work. The external ramp, not at all efficient, could work. You just need to build an obscenely long ramp.
With the pyramids, it's even harder because we're missing the entire construction phase, and we can't dismantle Khufu, and multiple methods could produce the exact same final shape. So it's less, this is absolutely true, and it's more, for now, this is the least wrong answer. And after months and months of digging into this, for a brief second, I also wondered, could it have been the aliens? And I think there's a tiny part of me that kind of wanted to believe it, because it really hurts to think that we might never know the answer.
Yeah, we just want it to be something absolute, you know?
But
what
maybe
were they used
that's
for?
the whole point. In a world where we can Google almost anything, the pyramids are one of the last things we can't force into clarity. And maybe if we understood them perfectly, they would lose the thing that makes them kind of extraordinary.
I would contend that I hope we find the answer because it will let us appreciate all the more how they did it 4,500 years ago.
So what do you guys think? Do you think we're
Fantastic
ever
video
gonna solve the mystery
by
of the
Dami Lee,
pyramids?
guys. Do
Let
check
me
out the
know in
original.
comments. And with that,
And leave a comment sharing your theory like she says. I'm going to link it to you guys in both chats. And then I want to talk some more about some theories. So this is the new construction theory. You build a much larger structure around, and then afterwards, as you dismantle it all, maybe you reuse the material, maybe you just dump it to the wayside in the desert, maybe it gets used for some other housing or where have you. But one thing that fits into this theory, based on historical information like old travelers' documents and drawings and everything, up until 1798 to be exact, there were these huge stones at the top. This one right here is estimated to weigh close to 10 tons on its size. And it's not just this one diagram, there's multiple people that have gone to the top and measured it several different times, different years. This is course 206 out of 210 levels of the pyramid initially. So almost at the very top, you have these gigantic boulders. Like if you're building for efficiency, you would never bring these stones up. Any construction theory that you come up with has to take into account these stones now. The internal ramp theory really doesn't. The external ramp theory also kind of doesn't. It's still as absurd. But this sort of huge structure thing does, right? And you might wonder why they did this too. Well, it's likely they just wanted a stable foundation before they placed the pyramidion stones at the top. But the Egyptians clearly, from this, never had any issues lifting stones. Up here, you don't have a lot of space. You're 140 meters into the air. And it's just like, yeah, should we crown it off with a couple of huge blocks that will never be seen by anybody? But it mattered to them enough that they bothered doing it. This fits with that. Another thing that this kind of fits with. So this video, he argues that the Great Pyramid had several phases of construction, and the first one would be somewhat of a stepped inner core. It might look something like this. In your first phase of construction, everything that's outside, you don't need to look at. It's just what the pyramid will look like on completion. But you start with something like this. And there are multiple things inside it that could align with certain levels. The Queen's Chamber air channels have this door, so-called, at the end of them. And they placed this covering block on them because while they were building the pyramid, they likely didn't want sand and rain and everything to get down into these air channels. But those line up. There's a like floor level here from the Queen's Chamber to the outside, which kind of lines up. There's another which might line up to where the big void intersects. This one right here. And another thing this would let you do is you could build the most complicated part of the pyramid first, which is the internal structure. I mean, this seems reasonable to me, and you can watch the video to hear about it in greater detail. If they did this, that would also align with having that type of ramp that we saw. I'm seeing so many comments say helicopter. Guys, they did not have a helicopter. They did not have a helicopter. No ender pearls, okay? Yeah, guys, I think we're gonna go next. Any last questions about the pyramids? Really fun to talk about as always. You guys know I love them, and I appreciate the creators a lot that do make videos about them. Check them out as well. I hope I pique your interest in pyramids and let you guys go check out the creators as well. Have you seen the video by Dami Lee? I can't wait.